Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's time for our absolute Superman page-by-page breakdown. One of my favorite comics of the year, without question. No more so relevant than right now in the U.S. We just had our presidential election. Did not, I will say, go in the way of democracy, but it makes this book even more relevant in a lot of ways. So yeah, we're gonna go page by page. We're gonna break it down. But I'll throw it over to you first, Rocky. What are your give us your overall thoughts?
Well, Absolute Superman I really enjoy it. I really enjoyed Absolute Batman. I think it's on par with that. I really enjoy it. I think it feels like a fresh take on Superman, and it feels. I know everyone everyone always wants the essence of Superman to feel the same, but this feels like a Superman that's challenged. The challenges are better. He's being tested more. The essence of the character of Kal-El slash Clark Kent, if he even is Clark Kent in this iteration, is tested far more, which I like. I like the fact that, when it's only when you're truly tested that if you can come out smelling like a rose and embracing all those ideals we know Superman has, this one really feels like he's more tested. And Jason Aaron's done a really good job of keeping to the essence of the character, but testing the character more and just putting it in a far more exciting setting. And maybe it's because I'm so bloody used to the same old mainstream Superman. God love him. I love the mainstream Superman, but I really like I like when the boat is rocked a little bit and the primary setting is changed a bit and the characters are put in different conditions and different backgrounds, and it sort of reminds me of why I love Superman in the first place. So rather than defeating the purpose, to me it revitalizes and sort of it reminds me of why I love the character in the first place. So I think Jason Aaron's done a fantastic job. Rafa Sandoval on the art just absolutely nails it. And as you'll hear my praising comments as we go through it. But and I'll be certainly curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The thing that this book does better than any Superman book I've read in a long time is get to the core of the character. And Jason Aaron talked about being sure to honor that with everything else changing. But who we know as Superman, a champion of the oppressed, a symbol of hope, like that comes through. And yeah, in this current political climate, I mean, the fact that this book is coming out the day after the election that a lot of people are disappointed in, and it feels like the U.S. is sliding toward fascism, and the little guy is getting stepped on. This is no more relevant than it could possibly be than right now. And so to be reminded of that, I think it's important. So yeah, I know things don't feel the best out there right now, but keep your heads up. Stories like this can inspire, they can start conversations, they can remind us, there are good people out there. And I think it's important. It's part of the reason that we do this every week. Talking about comics, talking about story. I say it all the time. The fictions that a society creates will tell you what the society cares about. And when you look at the stories and that are being put out by the creators, they care. They want these stories to be good. Yeah, I get that there's a very loud, what I thought was a minority, but apparently is a majority out there right now that's kind of railing against empathy and logic and unity. You read a story like this and you say, no, there are good people out there. There's good stories. This can connect to people. These are the things that can bring us together. So I know it sounds a little corny and a little tropey and what have you, but I really believe that. Superman is such a fantastic character for all those reasons. And again, this issue, this series, feels like a reminder of that in a way that I haven't been reminded of with Superman in a really, really long time. I mean, I haven't read a ton of Jason Aaron stuff. I haven't read his Thor run. I've read his Avengers run. I've read his Thanos, of all things, Thanos Rising, which I love. Obviously, I've read his
Yeah.
his work he's done in the DC universe. But yeah, this is easily easily my favorite thing he's ever done. I can't wait for more. Can't wait for issue 2. So let's go ahead and kick off our page by page, starting with this fantastic cover. We've seen this before. You can see, if you look at Superman's cape, how it is made out of the dust of Krypton, as Jason Aaron told me. It was exclusive at the time when he told me. It was the first one he hadn't mentioned anywhere else. So just fantastic. But notice kind of the gauntlets where Superman's costume comes up against his fist, how it seems to be on fire right there. Keep that in mind because we're going to see that more in the story as it plays out. So we get a little advertisement for Batgirl, which we reviewed on our DC Spotlight yesterday. If you haven't checked out our DC Spotlight, it's over on Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! On YouTube. Be sure you go and check that out. And then we get to the first page here, and it's a Kryptonian city, and we're being told, well, I guess shown and told in a way, because you can see how dense that city looks, how the buildings are all packed together. And it's not so, again, so different from this country where it says that Krypton is a planet ruled by its cities. And it talks about almost in a roundabout way, the technology of those cities, how they're sprawling, and there's, and Kandor's mentioned specifically, we're told lab-grown gardens, so even the vegetation you see is not natural. Everything is sort of genetically created and what have you. Lava powered energy plants, getting us into the idea that they're doing things to the core of the planet. They're trying to harvest the lava and what have you. But that have to do with instability, what have you. Also, there's supercapacitors, again leaning into that idea of technology, and the supercapacitors are so big they're the size of skyscrapers. They're made entirely of sunstone crystal, whatever that is. This idea of Krypton harnessing the energy of their sun. And the cities are ruled by the clerics of the Science Council. So again, Science League actually is what it's called. So again, these are similar ideas, science being held to a great standard. The smartest people supposedly are the rulers, and clerics is with a K. They're talking about harnessing the energy of the red sun to fuel the insatiable hunger for progress at all costs, which, when you think about that, like the idea of constantly needing to improve, constantly needing to one-up yourself, you reach an upper limit at some point, and what is the cost? It even says right there, at all costs. What is the real Kryptonian cost? Or in our terms, we'd say, what's the human cost? What's the human cost of constantly needing to progress? You can miss the forest for the trees when you look to that. But the people that live in the cities, the people that are these scientists, these are the Kryptonian ruling class, the most respected minds on the planet. And the person that's narrating this, as we'll come to learn, is Superman, is Kal-El. He says, and my parents were not among them. And it is interesting when we see this page here of the Science League, how they all have a symbol on their chest, which is a very Kryptonian thing to do. But it's a symbol of their red sun. So right away, in just a couple pages, Jason Aaron establishes how important the cities are, the Science Council, science itself is revered, and there's this idea of this elite class, which if you have the haves, which this elite ruling science class, they're clearly the haves, that means you're going to have have-nots. And if Kal-El's saying his parents were not among the venerated minds on the planet, does that mean, much like Absolute Batman, the Superman is poor? The House of El is not revered the way it is. And as far as I know, as far as I've read and remember, every iteration of Superman I've ever read, Jor-El and the House of El were respected. He was a very respected scientist. They were part of the ruling class, what have you. This flips that on its head. Right away, I'm pulled in. Thoughts, Rocky, on Krypton?
It's a caste society. And if you want to draw an analogy to societies on Earth, India is a caste society, and it's got different. There's different different peoples. There's different sections of society that have a role to play, and there is in a caste societies there's judgments, there's biases, and there's discrimination based upon the role that you play depending on what caste you're in, and it appears that Krypton in the absolute universe, Krypton was a caste society, and it has the ruling elite were the Science Council, and it is It is new, at least I agree with you that in my recollection, it's certainly new because we always sort of associated in traditional Superman mythology that Jor-El was part of that ruling elite, that he was an esteemed member of the Science Council that was sort of shunned when he suggested that Krypton was in danger of being destroyed and exploding. This appears to be more of a dare I say perhaps a lower or a middle class sort of Kryptonian, not member of the Science Society. So right away when this page opens up, we are we already got something different. And with Kal-El narrating it, it's very interesting that Kal-El's narrating it because he's clearly aware of what the history is, and that leads to some other revelations as we'll get into.
Yeah, so the next page we go out to more of the rural area of Krypton. So those cities, as I mentioned, densely packed, a lot of crystals. Kind of harkens back to the Richard Donner version of Superman with everything being made out of crystals and what have you. And we're told that the rain's late, and we see somebody, they're laying on their back, they're repairing a machine. Say the Sky Department, apparently there's a Sky Department, they control the weather. They must be having trouble maintaining the cloud systems because of all the gem storms, which is interesting. He says there's a gem storm near Zan that's been blowing for 40 days, hailing sapphires. So clearly, do not have any value if sapphires are, literally falling from the sky. It was mentioned that some of those city skyscrapers were made out of sunstone. So, this idea of gems and crystals being very plentiful but not having much value, again, more of a value on scientific knowledge rather than materialism. And the guy in the background who we see is wearing what looks to be the Superman emblem, the crest of the House of El there. He said, yeah, Krypton's always been a tough old ball of sun-beat grit, which I find to be interesting. We've already heard about them harnessing solar energy. He's talking about, sun-beat grit of Krypton. But he says, these days it feels like there's something wrong with the dirt. And his farm really needs rain. And so as this woman climbs out from under the machine, he's talking about having scheduled an early morning downpour from the clerics, but he hasn't seen so much as a drizzle. And, she says, that's how the Science League always is. It always takes longer than it's supposed to. That's the way it is for the Redlands. You get the feeling that the Redlands is maybe a little lesser, it's not the city. They don't get the priority. And she says, I'm sure they got all the rain they needed in Kandor today, again, because that's a city, the haves and the have-nots. And the farmer agrees with her. He's like, you just said a mouthful. And the rain bill's gone up. They pay for this rain. They pay for the rain for the crops that they're raising to feed the cities. So, again, it's this idea of this inequality. And she mentions, the price has gone up. It's crazy. It's like, for the price you're paying for rain, I could build you your own cloud seeders for that price. And he says, and then you get locked up for illegal sciencing. So not only is science revered, but it's also controlled by that ruling class. And not anybody can just go out and create things, apparently. You get locked up for illegal sciencing. But he does say, hey, I appreciate that you can get my harvester running. You're, fantastic mechanic. And it's clear that he's using some older technology. She talks about how it's a classic, but it was still made by somebody's hands, and she does get it working. And the farmer thanks her and says, "You're a lifesaver, Laura L." So this is Laura. This is Superman's mother, and she's literally a mechanic repairing harvesters on a farm. And he offers, rather than to pay her in any kind of currency, it's more of a kind of a trade society. He's going to offer her some crawberries. In my mind, similar to strawberries, probably. Says they're still Jorah's favorite, right? Obviously, she's still married to Jor-El there. And she mentions that Jor-El's going under today. And the farmer says, he must have gone under, 1,000 times by now. And she says, 3,475. She's literally counted. And she says, how come this time the idea of him going under has my stomach tied up in knots? So clearly whatever going under is important enough to her and dangerous enough that she's literally counted every time he's done it, which is really interesting. But going back to what we saw on first couple of pages with Superman, Kal-El narrating and saying his parents were not part of that. So what is it that Jor-El's doing? What is going under? And the fact his mother's a mechanic. They very much seem like they're going to be part of the working class, which again is a really interesting twist, and what that says about Superman himself. Because we were told, and we're going to see it in this book. And Rocky mentioned on the spotlight yesterday, this is not a Superman that left Krypton as an infant. Was old enough to have memories, old enough to be aware that his parents were working class. Very big departure. Anything to add about that, Rocky?
Well, yeah, and we also know that Laura's a rebel here. Laura and Jor-El, they're rebels, and rebels in the sense that they know what's wrong with Krypton. You can tell that she's got issues with it. She clearly has the intelligence. She could build her own what she refers to as her own cloud sweeper or something to create rain. They have the intelligence. They got the ability to break out of to be just as intelligent as the upper class, but they're held back. And this leads into that it reemphasizes through the characters the systemic problem, the class structure of Krypton, which contributes, unfortunately, to the major problem that, well, frankly, we know will lead to its destruction. And it also lays the foundation for what we know will be a significant mindset laid in the mind of Kal-El as this story moves forward, as we'll discover.
Yeah, so the next page, finally, these rain machines show up, and the farmer says, "Hey, let's go inside before we get drenched." Laura, what are you doing? She's like, "You paid for this rain. Don't you want to get your money's worth?" As she stands in the rain and it's falling on her. And we return to the narration of Kal-El, and he's given us some background on Laura, and he says that she was an exemplary student. She was destined for great things. Everybody said so, until she wrote an essay criticizing the ruling council, criticizing Krypton's lack of funding for interstellar exploration, a very insular society, and for that she was labeled unruly and banned from ever applying to the Science Academy, which would presumably allow her to move up the ladder of the caste system, become part of the science clerics, and have a better lot in life. She was 9 years old when that happened. 9 years old.
And already experiencing cancel culture, Kryptonian style.
Yeah. She wanted to be an astronaut, so of course she wanted, interstellar exploration. Wanted to, that hungry, curious mind that you have as a child. Clearly brilliant at 9 years old, and yeah, already, to use Rocky's word, already canceled, which is just terrible to think. So, again, really interesting this difference with this caste society, and this next page, double page spread, Kal-El goes on to explain a little bit more this class structure, how it defined all aspects of Kryptonian life, the pinnacle being the Science League, and on the bottom you had the Labor Guild, and system had so much distinct, the class distinctions were of utmost importance, and it was so hard to move between one level to another. Everybody was required to wear their status on their selves at all times. So that symbol we saw earlier, that sun symbol, that is the symbol of the science class, where you're considered to be better, if you will, and you always have it. And that symbol that we know as the symbol for the House of El, in this version of Krypton, in this Superman mythos, that's actually the symbol of the Labor League, and the people that were wearing that were fixing harvesters or serving food or janitorial services or whatever, they wore it with pride, because it meant something to them. And based on what the symbol looked like for the Science League, they were considered the children of the sun, and those who made their own way with their own hands, the Labor League, they were the people of steel. So that's interesting. We obviously, it looks like an S to us. It stands for Superman, as it was originally created. But what a great twist for Jason Aaron to put this in, right? It's not just a symbol of the House of El, but a symbol of the entire Labor Guild, and a guild of people that took pride in kind of working with their hands, creating things, working hard, and considered themselves the people of steel. Obviously, one of Superman's nicknames, the Man of Steel. So, again, just a great job world building from
That
Jason
is.
Aaron here.
And just building on that, and again, even though this is a story in and of itself, but the metaphor, we got that classic e- truth, justice, in the American way. And what greater embodiment of the American way than working with your own two hands, the American rugged individualism of the American historical work ethic, and 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 that symbol of the S standing for far more than simply hope, but embodying the working class people of an entire planet that unfortunately fall victim to another class of people. But the symbolism is really, really good, and I echo your sentiment about Jason Aaron really doing a nice change, a slight change of what that S emblem actually represents, because I like it better than symbolizing hope, even though it essentially it embodies hope as well. But the fact that it embodies an entire working class of people struggling with their own two hands, it actually, I think, does a better job of representing with that analogy what Superman ultimately stands for. So kudos to Jason Aaron. That was a great idea.
Yeah, again, really fantastic world building. So, next page, we learn what going under means for Jor-El. He's in a mine. There's a warning. There's an instability alert. Everybody's told to evacuate immediately. He's there looking around. One of the people he's with saying, I don't see any signs of stress fracture or dimpling. Nothing that looks like the start of a sinkhole or a cave-in. He's like, are you sure your diggers heard splintering? Jor-El says, yeah, they said it was, as loud as they've ever heard it. Clearly if you're in a mine and you start to think there's going to be a cave-in, you're going to get the heck out of there. But interesting, this idea of, I talked about it before, this, using lava as an energy, constantly excavating their planet. Like, you can't just continually hollow out your planet. It's going to cause instability. But again, that arrogance, that Kryptonian, kind of way of thinking that they're so good, nothing ever bad could happen. And they're talking to Jor-El saying, hey, scanned and scanned again, nothing but solid sunstone, for 5 miles in every direction. Maybe it's just some diggers that lost their nerves. We need to reopen, but it's your call because you're the engineer, Jor-El. And Jor-El's kind of talking to the planet itself, saying, I'm listening. What are you trying to tell me? When a foreman shows up, notice he has a little bit of a different symbol there on that third panel on his chest. He says, why are my workers standing around? Why are they not digging sunstone? And one of the other people with Jor-El says, safety concerns, miners heard something. And Jor-El says, I shut it down. I'm here from geological engineering. There's concerns about the safety of the mine. And this guy's like, based on what? Show me the stress markers. And Jor-El says, well, I'm still looking for them. We should do some more searching, do some more digging. And this guy's like, I got a better idea that will save us a whole mess of trouble. Take a good look at my chest. Again, he has a different symbol. And then, look at yours. And then go march yourself upstairs and tell those diggers that the League of Middle Managers, like, oh my God, dude. Like, bad enough you have a science council and then you have the labor guild. There's a League of Middle Managers. Like, if there's anything that, bureaucracy and red tape, middle managers, the worst. So, no wonder this guy's just an absolute jackass. And he says, hey, get everybody back down here. Tell them to get back to work now. Jor-El's like, no, you're not going to do this. The shaft is closed until further inspection. I'll launch the probes myself. And again, this manager's like, man, you must be the dumbest laborer ever. You'll be digging ditches in the tundra before I'm done with you. Again, just trying to throw his weight around. But before anything else can happen, there's some rumblings. Looks like the cave-in's starting to happen. And we see Superman say, my father Jor-El was set to graduate the Science Academy with impeccable marks. So he actually shouldn't be part of the Labor Guild at all. He went to the Science Academy. He was all set to graduate at the top of his class. A high-ranking position in the Science Guild awaited him. At the graduation ceremony, he gave a speech condemning what he saw as environmental recklessness. So what I was just talking about, just hey, we're just going to mine the sunstone. We're not going to give any thought to doing it responsibly or whatever, because nothing bad will happen, because we're Krypton and bad stuff doesn't happen to us. Um, he was talking, Jor-El was talking in his speech about the pillaging of Krypton's natural resources, how it was endangering the planet. He warned that something drastic could happen. It would lead to a global catastrophe, and they just laughed at him. They laughed him right out of the league, right out of graduation. That's how so he actually went down, it sounds like, in the caste system, out of the life that he once knew, because he was doing what he thought was right. He was trying to warn everybody that this could happen. But he was right, and we see there at the bottom of this page in those panels, we see the mine cracking, we see the green, which we assume to be kryptonite, exploding, and things are not going well. So really interesting that both of Superman's parents were destined for bigger, better things, but through circumstances of trying to better themselves, better the planet, they were condemned by narrow thinking of Krypton. So
another way of putting it is that they both were speaking the truth. Superman embodies truth of one of many things, and his parents embodied truth. Jor-El expressing the truth of what fate awaited Krypton, but he was ignored. When Laura was 9 years old, she was stating the truth about her opinion. And at 9 years old, she was canceled. She was removed. So it really shows the rigidity and just how corrupt and rigid to use your word, that the Kryptonian Science League had become. And it's just, it's really tragic. You can really see the tragedy of this story unfold. And of course, because it's an iteration of the Superman origin, we know, unfortunately, we know how it's going to end, and it just reinforces the tragedy of what we know is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, so often you look at the metaphor, regardless of which version of the Superman mythos you're reading, and the idea that Krypton could have saved itself if they just would have listened. We have some of that here with climate change. So yeah, Krypton is doomed. Superman says it. My homeworld was rotting from within. The towering cities, the windswept redlands, the purple farms and crystal forests and glass mountains. Whether you were a scientist or a laborer or middle manager, doesn't matter. All of it, all of Krypton was doomed because, again, they just didn't listen. So then we shift to Earth. We are now in Brazil, and we see, once again, a lower caste, if you will. We see some miners. They are talking about how they need to be, they're migrant workers. They work at the Lajes Creek diamond mine, and they were tunneling underneath some ore, which is the typical host matrix for diamonds, when they came across a large deposit of asbestos, which is, very poisonous, very dangerous for humans, and so they stopped. They left, and they were ordered by their employers to keep digging. So they did. They're risking their lives for what? For some shiny rocks? Very, very similar to a metaphor, an allegory, whatever word you want to use, to what was happening on Krypton. What's interesting is when that line that says they were ordered by their employers to keep working, we see those peacemakers. It looks like guys in peacemaker armor there that are their employers. So then we're told snow began to fall. Again, this is Superman that's narrating this. It says snow began to fall, outside on the little shanty towns where the workers' families live, but it wasn't truly snow. They're continuing to mine. They're drilling and digging through this asbestos, and it's throwing this asbestos up in the air, and it's falling down on snow, literally a blizzard of carcinogens. And when the workers are trying to leave, they're reminded, hey, you're under contract. The mine's owners, which is Lazarus Corp, which is a new organization. Apparently they're going to be the big bad of this Superman story, at least to start. These miners were reminded at gunpoint, hey, you got to go in, you got to do your job, you got to keep digging through this substance that can cause cancer. And not only are they risking their lives by digging through it, it's throwing this stuff up into the air, and their families, their elderly, their kids, they're being exposed to it too. This is just awful. And they promised them hazard pay of 1,500 reais. if you would if they'd finished mining the ore, roughly $300 more than a month's pay. $300. You're going to give your life up for $300 while working this mine where they're extracting $200 million worth of diamonds a year, and they're being offered each $300. These miners are expected to do this in this dark hell, dig themselves to death, and they do it because they don't really have a choice. They do it in the name of their family, and Superman does the same, we're told. So
And
very much a sense of going back to sort of earliest days of Superman, where he's really fighting for the little guy.
yeah, and an obvious juxtaposition to the mining operations on Krypton, where the labor class that Jor-El is part of, or relegated to, demoted to on Krypton, mining sunstone on Krypton, and trying to enforce safety regulations, but being forced to ignore them to the detriment and to the danger of the miners on Krypton. And the same thing, we have the same analogy, the same thing happening here in Brazil. Years later, in Brazil, with they're mining diamonds, but the same ignoring of safety protocol, the carcinogens in the air. And so right away, Jason Aaron does a really good job of sort of drawing those similarities in there. And you can, this sort of heightens it makes it brings it all together, because he's clearly drawing an analogy between the absolute Krypton and absolute Earth, one that's really going to resonate as this story moves forward.
So as the miners head back down into the mine, they find that the diamonds have already been mined and crushed, and these miners can't figure out how to do it. Like diamonds, the ore's been mined, it's been crushed. Like it's impossible. The crusher hasn't even been used. All the asbestos is just gone. They're like, it doesn't make any sense. This is some kind of miracle. Another one says, in madness, we need to tell somebody. And one of the main guys, leaders of the miners here, Zhao, he's like, no. The work is done. We say nothing. You understand? Like, all that's left is for us to just take him to the surface and claim our pay. Like, why would we don't want to, keep your head down. You don't want to rock the boat. And meanwhile, the guards up top are like, they can't be coming out with the diamonds already. They just went back down there. Another one says, yeah, apparently something similar happened in Botswana and Dharavi, and now it looks like it's happened again. Meanwhile, one of the miners says to the other, how is this possible? Does this mean the Omega Men are real? Like, Omega Men, wait, what? We're going to have an Omega Men sighting here? That's a really interesting little Easter egg. And Zhao's like, speak no more of it. And the guy's like, well, I'd never say anything in front of the peacemakers. None of us would. But who do you think really did this? They want to know. They're curious. And so we flash back to the previous night. We can see the asbestos snow still falling. And we see Zhao, and he's talking to somebody in a red and blue jacket. He's saying, you're alone. Do you not speak Portuguese? Someone said they heard you speaking Spanish. Another said English. And another one of the elders says, you're a wild boy of the Amazon who speaks only gibberish. I don't mean to pry. We all have our secrets here. But I'm just curious. I'm Zhao. Do you have a name? And what's interesting is as Zhao asks that panel, Zhao is. This person is looking through Zhao, like using X-ray vision. This is Kal-El. This is Superman showing up for the first time. And he, in response to being asked a name, he whispers, he says, not anymore. What do you want from me? And that's very interesting. We're going to come back to this idea of whispering here in a second. But a very understated first appearance here when, we're like 15 pages in before he ever shows up. When he does show up, again, it's very understated, and it's clear that he's not necessarily the trusting type of Superman we know. Like, this Zhao is asking him questions, trying to get to know, and his first response is to use his X-ray vision to make sure this guy's human. Like, who is he? Was he asking me? And he's asking. Superman is asking, what do you want from me? And
it's an odd answer too, like you say. Like, he's asked what is his name, and he says, do you have a name? And he says, why would he say not anymore? Okay, like so maybe he doesn't have his Kryptonian name, but why doesn't he have an Earth name? It's an odd answer. And as you said, as the lettering indicates, he almost says it in a whisper. And so you really get a sense of he's a very almost repressed. Maybe he's accustomed already. Jason Aaron has planted the hints that this is a character, a young Kal or young Superman who's used to keeping secrets, and he very much is isolated and alone, and he's clearly not perhaps accustomed to having friends. Heck, he's not even accustomed to having a name, apparently. So right away, we're just shown we know he's heroic, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this guy must have this version of Superman must have a very, very different kind of background.
Yeah, very different upbringing, and what comes to light, and I'll talk about it more in a minute, is just this idea of isolation. Like he's just completely isolated. So when he asked Zhao, what do you want from me? And Zhao's like, hey, tomorrow we face the blizzard, right? We face this catastrophe. We got to go into the mine, even though there's asbestos, and mine it. But tonight there's barbecue boar and grilled plantains and drinking and dancing and then sleep and join us. You're welcome. You should be part of the family. And in response, Kal-El whispers, I've seen the wonders of your world. And Zhao can't even hear him. He's like, what are you saying? I can barely hear you. And so he speaks louder. He says, I've seen the wonders of your world. So, he's saying, he's acknowledging, yes, and he's not necessarily talking about the scenery, as it were, but, the wonders of their world in terms of the camaraderie, in terms of the sense of family. But that phrase, my world, catches Zhao's attention. He's like, my world? What's this guy talking about? Like, isn't he from here as well? Um, and meanwhile, Superman goes on to say, I've seen a lot of places like this with this industry that runs on suffering. And how do you know what the truth is? And Zhao says, well, what you have is worth fighting for. That's what the truth is. Like, if you have a family and it's worth fighting for, then family is your truth. And Superman responds, but what if you have nothing? It's like, I have to go. I have more work to do, but thank you. Like it does feel like he's touched by Zhao's invitation. And Zhao's like, work? What do you mean? And he turns around and the guy's gone. He pulls a Batman on him. So going back to this idea of isolation, right? Like he doesn't have a name. Why does he need a name? If no one knows who he is, if he has no family, if you're completely isolated, you're in a strange place, why do you need a name? Nobody talks to you. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody knows what to call you. Why would you need a name? Of course he speaks in whisper. He never until Zhao reaches out, it seems like nobody's reached out to this guy. Nobody's seen him. He's kept all to himself. He's not even used to probably verbalizing and talking. So that's why he's so quiet. That's why he's so introspective. It's why he's so introverted. It's a very, very different sort of Superman. But as we'll see, the core of the character, the heroism, the ability and willingness to sacrifice for others, to fight for the little guy is still there. But what a different sort of, and Jason Aaron has said this many times in interviews he's given, the raw material of the Superman that we know. He's not done, and it's going to take a while, probably a long while, and we'll enjoy the journey. But he's not done. He's not the thing yet. He's not done becoming Superman. He hasn't learned that. But unlike other stories where they've used that analogy, like the one that immediately comes to mind is Zack Snyder's Superman movie, right? And there's he killed Zod because he didn't know not to kill. He had to learn that lesson or whatever, because he wasn't done becoming Superman yet. That's the wrong way to do it. Just because you haven't learned a lesson doesn't mean you do the worst thing. This is the way to do it. Yes, he's not Superman yet, but he inherently knows right from wrong. That's who Superman is. Will he get better? Will he become more formidable? Will he gain more experience and be able to use his powers better? Yes, I'm assuming all of those things. But the core of the character is true to who Superman is. But right now, he's not a symbol of hope. He doesn't have those connections. He doesn't feel comfortable reaching out to people because he's so isolated. Again, a very, very different take. And it is a little bit of can be a trope in science fiction stories, but it's one I love. It reminds me that isolation and kind of being out on your own, but always wanting to help. You know what it reminds me of, Rocky? It reminds me of the old school Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk TV show that I just loved as a kid, where he was out there on the run, all alone, but always ready and willing to do the right thing. Seems very similar to Superman here, because it's mentioned by those peacekeeper soldiers that this mining of diamonds has happened miraculously 2 times before. Clearly, that's Kal-El out there trying to make things better for these miners.
He's at the beginning of his hero's journey, and it's very revealing here. And again, kudos to Jason Aaron, because I think he's really focusing on that truth and justice aspect here, because that concept of Superman fighting for amongst those 3 things, truth. Superman asks Zhao, how do you know which is the truth? And Zhao says something very revealing that Superman's yet to discover. He says, when you have what is worth fighting for, that is the truth, which emphasizes that Superman at this time doesn't have really anything worth fighting for. He's at this time, we can presume at this point in this story, he's lost his parents. He's alone. What does he have to fight for? He's clearly fighting for the miners. He's fighting for the people, undoubtedly because there's some, because he feels it's the right thing to do. He's got that instinct to help people, but he's still searching for a little bit more to fight for, and he'll of course he'll discover that when inevitably he'll meet what we assume is going to be his supporting cast. But it's just such a wonderful foreshadowing of what we know is likely to come. So it's just really great writing.
So meanwhile, flashing back to the present time, we see that these peacekeeper soldiers that work for Lazarus Corp are beating on the kids, beating on the miners, trying to find out what happened. Said, hey, keeping something from us. These diamonds didn't mine themselves. Someone among you enjoys breaking the peace. Who is it? After everything we've done for you animals, he doesn't even see these people as humans. Again, echoing the Kryptonian caste thing. Said Lazarus means life, but maybe for you it ought to mean something else. They do a head count. Only one of the workers didn't report for their shift, and that being Kal-El. So he's getting a warning. He's in some sort of sleep chamber, and he gets a warning. It says peacekeepers approaching, conflict imminent, solar charging suspended. So apparently this cocoon that he's in, you see he's literally in this little shanty in the shanty town, but it has like a solar panel on the roof with all these glowing red cables that go down and look like they connect to Superman or connect to his suit in some way. And so it says, the peacekeepers are approaching. Conflict is imminent. The solar charging suspended, instigating wake-up procedures. And Superman's thinking, I should have been gone. And we do see a little bit of Kryptonian there as well. So, again, Superman's thinking, I should have been gone. I should have been on to the next mine or the next corporate pig farm or the next sweatshop factory. Years, we're told, years of running all across the planet, from jungle, big water, to where, whatever you call those places that are nothing but sand. It's always the same. It's always misery. It's always the Lazarus Corporation, except this time he overreached himself. He's left himself weak. He's left himself sun-starved, dreaming of a long ago time when I still knew who I was. Obviously, he's referring to before he left Krypton, when he was still Kal-El. And he overextended himself, didn't leave himself enough time to recharge. And because he had to stay in a recharge, now he's attracted the attention of the Lazarus Corporation. Meanwhile, they're telling all the citizens to evacuate. Said, evacuate the area. Lazarus means obedience. Everybody get out of here. They're like kicking the kids out of the way. They get to the shanty where Superman is. They say, come out with your hands in the air or you'll be shot. And that's what finally startles Superman awake, or perhaps it's whatever this voice in red that's yelling out Kal-El. And so as they go to break down the door, we see Superman attacks. And again, what I was pointing out earlier on the cover, where his gauntlet was kind of orange and looked like it was on fire, almost like when you have a hot rod car and the flames are painted on it. We see him punching one of these peacemakers to the point where even the transport that they're in goes flying. And they call for reinforcements, contact, open fire. And although maybe he wasn't expecting this fight or wanting this fight, Superman says maybe it's for the best that I didn't leave, because after years of watching all these people be treated terribly, he says after years of watching these people treat the poorest and lowest among them like little more than cattle, maybe I've gotten tired of running. And as he says that, he stands revealed, and it's a fantastic splash page from Rafa Sandoval, where they've got all the weapons trained on him, and again, you can see those glowing gauntlets and his boots as well. So how much of a charge he got remains to be seen. Did he get fully charged? What does it mean to be charged? Is it his suit that charges? Is it himself that has the powers? So many questions that haven't been answered. I hope you guys all got a chance to read my interview with Rafa Sandoval, where he talks about how important the suit is, how there's a sentimental reason for the suit. We know the cape is made out of the dust of Krypton, so there's a lot to discover there about the suit. But man, he looks awesome here. But the other thing that really stands out to me, Rocky, is how young he looks. You mentioned it before. He's a hero at the beginning of his journey. Makes a lot of sense. Almost to where I would say Superboy rather than Superman. Yeah. Looks extremely young.
Yeah, I find it very interesting, that suit, because when it says, that key phrase that I picked up on that you read about, solar charge suspended. It's very interesting because we've always known why the hell does he need a suit to charge? He's charged by the yellow sun. At least in the traditional mainstream Superman mythology, is this different? He can also have a suit that also charges him, but this is very interesting. Is it what exactly is the difference in terms of how he becomes empowered? Because I have so many questions. Why does he need to rely on the suit? Maybe he's over-reliant on the suit. Maybe he doesn't understand that he doesn't need the suit to become empowered. But maybe he does in the absolute universe. We just don't know, but we got so many interesting questions. And so right away, it's just... And I love the look. I so love the look with the sort of like the solar colored, like the gauntlets on his, at the end of his arms and his legs. It just looks so epic and so cool. And I really, really like this suit. And I like the fact too that he doesn't have a cape when he first appears in this image. He doesn't, I don't need the cape actually, which I find surprising. I know he'll likely, on the cover he has a cape, but I'm just saying he looks epic with just that look. It's such a great first appearance because it's so important that in any movie and in any comic book, when you first see the hero in all their glory, it's got to be an epic moment. And Randall Sandoval does a fantastic job here of doing precisely that. Very well done.
Yeah, when he showed up previously, we didn't have a good look at him. He had the hoodie on. He was in the shadows. Here, it's a full-page splash. He shows up for the first time, and yeah, he just looks epic, as you said.
Yeah.
And whoever this person with this red dialogue, it almost seems like it's the suit itself. Is the suit sentient? Is that the one person that he's had to talk to all along? And it's giving him information. It's saying, interesting, the Lazarus, unlike the other Lazarus forces we've encountered, they appear to have technology that's not native to this galaxy. Is it Kryptonian technology? Is it other technology? How did Lazarus get it? We don't know. But he's asking whoever this being is, whether it's suit or something else, saying, if I hit them, will they live? And the voice responds, yes, but I still advise against that. And Superman says, well, I knew you were going to say that, but we're not leaving until these miners are safe. Meanwhile, the rounds that they're firing against Superman are ineffective, so they say, okay, we're going to adjust the ammunition, which again, advanced technology. How can you adjust the ammunition? Now it's printing maximum caliber. What are these, like 3D print guns? Like, what the heck is going on here? A really interesting difference here between the suit and what's going on. But he doesn't really seem to have that much trouble fighting against them. And the voice says, this is a planet of combustion engines, fanatical religions, and thermonuclear weapons. These people are never safe. So the voice is advocating, hey, I get that you want to try to save these miners, but at the end of the day, they still live on a planet that's full of danger. So, what are you doing? You need to get out of there. You need to, um, not waste your time, basically, not put yourself at risk, which is goes against what Superman, the core of who Superman is as a character. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier about inherently he just is that guy that's going to stand up for the little guy, even with his own technology or whatever it is telling him, hey, you're not safe, you're exerting yourself too much here, you're running out of your solar energy, you want to make these miners safe, they're never going to be safe because they live on this planet. And him arguing back, hey, the workers are in danger, all I want to do is help them, I tried to help them by mining those diamonds, it's my fault, they're in danger because of that now. As he zips around and makes sure that all the kids are safe from like the fires and what have you that he started, Zhao sees him and said, oh, I recognize you, you're the boy that spoke in whispers. And Superman says, hey, if Lazarus is not going to pay you for those diamonds, you should take them to someone who will, but just get everybody out of here. And he can't even finish. The voice tells him he must leave, but before he can, he's like struck by lightning, so they must have like a more powerful weapon to attack him with. So these we're told that there are Reaper drones that are being sent, reinforcements are being sent to go up against Kal-El. This guy, apparently some general or what have you from Lazarus, he's saying the director wants this guy alive. This comes directly from Lazarus' command. So they have what's called a phenomenon field team going there to try to take him out. And this guy's saying, tell me what you see as you're looking at him. And they're saying, well, his physical abilities look like they're beyond human scale. It's definitely the same subject as Botswana and Dharavi. So, that was mentioned earlier. He was a part of those incidents there. Clearly, they've been running surveillance on him. And there's also some kind of interference with the images. So that might be a little bit of almost a throwaway line that we can explain later why he's not able to be identified if he tries to have a secret identity. And then someone else, this woman, says it's the suit. If you look closely, you can see the suit's shifting and changing. It's almost like a living armor. And she's like, I'd swear he's almost talking to it. So maybe it is the suit that's sentient, which would be interesting. Meanwhile, the suit's telling him, you can't control your energy if you're expending it this quickly. And we see and maybe it's for the first time, the way he's yelling and screaming, he uses like heat vision and X-ray vision. And the suit's telling him it's my mission to protect you, and Cal's saying, enough. I need you to shut me down. So again, this idea of an inexperienced Superman, that he's using these powers, and perhaps he doesn't even have control of them. He's not even exactly sure how to use them. He's asking the suit to shut him down. Suit says, yeah, it's my mission to protect you, to guard the last living vestige of the House of El. So I've got to urge you once again, don't engage, right? Like the reinforcements have come, and the suit is still encouraging him to run, basically. So
you can already see remnants of how the cynicism of the suit. The suit is there to protect him, but I think you can already envision, I think, a foreshadowing of that suit, that living, changing suit, almost being an albatross for him. It protects him, but at the same time, I think it's at times almost discouraging him from going, from helping as much as he is. He's got an instinct to do more, but the suit's always holding him back. And one gets the sense that the suit is always, is a remnant of Krypton. And as you hinted at in your interview with Rappel Sandoval, if there is a sentimental value to the suit, it might be something that, there might be a disadvantage to it, because I get the sense, I still question whether or not he needs the suit. Does he even appreciate that maybe he doesn't need the suit? Does he even know that maybe he assumes wrongly that he needs to wear the suit? So I got, again, so many questions, but I really love the relationship, the character work. I can't believe the AI construct of the suit is actually a character in the story, and I'm just as interested in the character of the AI communication to with Kal-El as I am Superman himself. So just again, just more intrigues, more interesting questions, and I'm just Jason Aaron is just he's doing a great job. And again, the Sandoval art with the weapons used against Superman, sort of against the suit, the electric, the look of the lightning, and it just looks so epic. And the way that the female character, who we'll get to know of more at the end, when she describes the soup as changing shape like living armor, you get a sense of that on that same page, a couple panels above, where you see Superman sort of being crackling with energy, and the suit does sort of like change shades and with the whites and the blues. And again, the color work is just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. The suit being a remnant, if the suit is a construct of Krypton, constructed by the Science Council there, and if it has any sort of sentience or intelligence, it makes sense that it would reflect the values of Krypton. Not necessarily the values that Kal was taught by his parents, who both sort of inherently rebelled against those values because they weren't right. But interesting, as the suit implores him, don't engage. Don't risk your life for these people. Leave this place. Go back to the shadows. Go back in hiding. Never forget the lesson of Krypton. Some worlds simply cannot be saved. Like, what kind of message is that? Some worlds can't be saved? Don't try? Go run and hide? That is so antithetical to who Superman is. But again, he's young. He hasn't learned the lesson. But we can see that he already is not doing what the suit has told. The suit told him from the beginning, run, don't engage. He's like, no, I'm going to save these miners. I'm going to save these people.
But at the same time, he also has some fear. Superman does have some fear because he says, enough, Saul, shut me down. And the suit has a name. It's called Saul, shut me down, which is interesting because Saul is the name of our son. So it's interesting that he names his suit. He calls his suit Saul, which is the name of our sun in our Milky Way galaxy. And it's interesting. Enough, Saul, shut me down. It's almost as if, is he afraid to use his powers? Has he ever gone full bore before? And so already we're getting hints of those types of fears that he might have in, going full bore with the use of his strength.
Yeah, I mean, if he's never wanted to reveal himself, maybe he's never used his powers to this extent. So you're right. He's worried about what he's capable of. He doesn't have control because he hasn't used it a lot of times. So yeah, very, very interesting. And it's like the one companion that he's had, right? He probably doesn't even have to talk out loud in order to communicate with the suit, which goes back to, why he would whisper. He's not even used to talking. But yeah, that idea that some worlds simply cannot be saved, not from themselves, as we see a ton more Lazarus troops show up with tanks and helicopters to try to attack him. Say, field team, go, go, go. And Superman saying, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe this was a bad idea, as, again, he's got all these peacemaker soldiers and there's tanks with these giant barrels pointed at him, and he's like, "Okay, you were right. Let's get out of here." But before he can leave, all of a sudden we see this clank, and there's some sort of a giant brace or something that goes over his wrist, and we get a fantastic moment here where we see that woman that was speculating about the suit changing shape, and she says, "This is Agent Lane, suspect in company." So I don't know if you could see it that well in that previous panel, but if you look closely, when she talks about the suit, it does look like she has purple eyes, which is a hallmark of Lois Lane. So yeah, Lois Lane showing up in the first issue here, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Much like Joker showing up, I would have wanted to go a little bit longer, but I've completely forgiven in the way I don't forgive the Joker showing up. First of all, because I think Lois Lane is a little more intrinsic to the Superman mythos than Joker is to Batman. But also, I like this idea that she's working for the bad guy. Like, that is so interesting. And the other thing that's fantastic about it, in so many different iterations of Superman, or Kal-El, it's Lois that christens him Superman first, and it's the same thing here, saying, "Move and I fry your face, Superman," and it's in quotes, right? Because he's been able to, withstand all these attacks and all these weapons and what have you, and clearly he's something more, excuse me, than just a regular guy. But Yeah, really interesting twist to have Lois show up here and be the bad guy. Thoughts on that, Rocky?
Well, it's interesting that, she's in the traditional Superman iterations, when she christens him Superman, it's always done with affection. Here it's done with a sense of derision and almost sarcasm. And it just works so well. And I love the reveal, and I wasn't expecting it. And I like the fact that she's not a reporter. I really like the fact that she's not a reporter. It's that's what I love about this entire issue, is that everything is flipped on its head. This is very much uh, I know it's a cliche to say, but all of my expectations were subverted here in all the right, wonderful ways for all these characters. And the fact that I'm even liking an artificial AI character that's the suit called Saul, just goes to show you that everything is I'm very, very impressed. And we're not even done yet. We're introduced at least one other mysterious character before this comic is concluded.
Yeah, and before I go move on to the next page, I want to call everybody's attention. Look at the expression on the face of Superman from Rafa Sandoval. He's sad, he's disappointed, he's scared, he's worried. That is just fantastic. He doesn't know what's going to come next now that is he captured? Can he break out? Like, just a fantastic mix of emotions on Superman's face right there.
I want to add one other thing: the spit curl. The spit curl is a lot longer. It's the hairstyle's different, and instead of like the death is the Superman Return from the Dead long
mullet,
hair.
Yeah.
Mullet, yeah. The spit curl is just it's a longer hairstyle in the front with that classic spit curl that Sandoval just nails, because it's those little things like that that just really pull you in. And I have to say that the short hair of Lois Lane is divergent as well, because I guess I'm old school. I always think of Lois Lane as having long hair. So Superman has the slightly longer hair and Lois Lane has the short hair. So it's almost like a little bit of a reversal on the hairstyles there. So which I find kind of interesting.
Yeah, I kind of like her with short hair. She's got short hair in the My Adventures of Superman cartoon. The first time I saw it, and it kind of works. I like it. So next page is actually the credits page. We finally get to it. Obviously written by Jason Aaron, like we've been talking about. Been talking a lot about Rafa Sandoval's incredible art. But you mentioned it earlier, Rocky. The Ulysses Areola color it's just so great. I mean, in those action scenes with the lasers and the lightning, how it looks like it's glowing. I mean, these are static images, and things look like they're moving. And it's fantastic. We both mentioned the gauntlets and the boots, how they're glowing. They look like they're on fire when he's fighting. So just a fantastic job from the entire creative team. And Becca Carey, the letterer, does a fantastic job of fitting her word balloons in, where they should be, and not covering up any of that beautiful art. And at no point when you're reading this do you ever feel like it's not paced out. Like, it's paced very, very well. And one of the things, I haven't necessarily talked about this, because at times this can be a wordy book, especially because we have the dialogue boxes of Kal-El at times, and of Soul, the suit, talking at times, and it's a lot to fit on the page, and to make sure that you fit it in well where it doesn't block the art. But not only that, the spacing of those boxes and the spacing of the word balloons, that dictates how fast you read the book, which contributes to the pacing. And when it's not done right, it feels choppy. And letters, they don't get enough credit sometimes for doing it the right way and making sure that it flows. And she definitely does a fantastic job. So credit where credit's due to Becca Carey. Fantastic job on the lettering. A little bit of a epilogue here. We see the Nevada desert. We see greens. We see purples. We see 3 purple lights above this bean. So, 3 pinkish purple lights. Immediately I think Brainiac. But also with the way the armor looks, could it be Lex Luthor? I'm leaning more toward Brainiac because, he sees these pictures. It's the Nevada desert. It's the, you see in that middle panel there, the Lazarus Corp R&D department. So, yeah, somehow Brainiac is wrapped up in that. He's watching this video footage of this fight against Superman. He's saying, what do we have here? A new toy. Where did you come from? Maybe he is an alien. still in this iteration of Superman. Maybe that's where they got their technology, this weapons technology that's from another galaxy. So it remains to be seen, but very foreboding introduction here. And then on the following page, we shift to central Kansas, and we see a very dilapidated barn. We see a mailbox that's about fallen down with the name Kent on it, and we see a very rundown farmhouse that says it's the property of Lazarus Corp. So it will, Rocky said earlier, will he be Clark Kent? Where are the Kents? Why does Lazarus own their farm? How's this all going to play out? Really interesting tease from Jace and Aaron there. And then we flash back in time to Krypton years ago, the Redlands. This is basically that same day that we saw earlier, where Laura had repaired the harvester and Jor-El had been caught in the collapse of the mine. And as he heads home, she runs out to greet him, says, "What happened? These look like radiation burns. Were you in the hospital? Was there an accident?" And he says, "Yeah, there's got to be testing. I can't say for sure. I need to get started right away." And Laura's like, well, "Tell me what's going on." And he says, "We can't tell anybody yet. We have to be certain before we warn the world. But look around at this world, at its beauty, and remember how beautiful it was once it's gone." And she's like, "What do you mean gone? You don't mean?" And before she can even finish, he starts yelling for Kal. "Hey, Kal, where's Kal? Where's our son?" She says, "Don't worry, he's right here." And he comes running up, and again, this is an older Superman, still on Krypton. What is he? Maybe 9, 10 years old there. So clearly, old enough to remember what Krypton was like. We see what I'm assuming is crypto. So apparently they have dogs on Krypton that look very similar to dogs on our world. And Jor-El says, I'm so sorry. And Laura says, "Father's going to be fine. We're going to be all right. We're going to get through this the way that we always do together." So clearly Jor-El is worried that his predictions that the planet is going to explode are coming true, but he has to run more tests. He has to be sure before they warn everybody. But I mean, we know how it ends, right? They're not going to listen anyway. And despite the fact that Jor-El and Laura-El and Kal-El are going to try to get through it together, it's likely that only only Kal and Krypto survive. So final panel tells us a little tease. Next, Superman versus Lois Lane. So what that will be, we'll have to find out next issue. But it's also telling that in that final issue, or a final panel rather, they don't have as much time as Jor-El thinks, because you can already see that the kryptonite is breaking through the surface of the planet. I mean, before when we saw the cracks, they were underground. They were under, right? Jor-El had gone under, we were told. Well, now here we are later that same day, and we already see that those cracks are appearing on the surface. So they probably don't have as long as Jor-El might want or hope that they do. And that's how the first issue comes to an end.
And just to reemphasize something that might be one of the most significant changes is that it shows the Kent farm destroyed. It's quite possible that he was not, well, he clearly as a young boy, he was not raised as a child by Jonathan and Martha Kent. He was raised by Jor-El and Laura, his Kryptonian parents. And we don't know how old he was when he got to Earth. Maybe he was 12, 13, maybe he was the age of Kara in the mainstream universe. Maybe he was 14. We don't know how old he was when he got to Earth, or how he gets there. That's obviously going to be in subsequent issues. Did he ever meet the Kents? Did he ever have a Clark Kent identity? We see the Kent farm ostensibly destroyed, the property of Lazarus Corporation. And we traditionally think of the Lazarus Corporation as being, we think of Lazarus, we think of Lazarus Pit, we think of Ra's al Ghul, we think of Lazarus as being a pit that sort of resurrects the dead. Is that going to be, is there any relationship there? We don't know, but it's very, very interesting. Are Jonathan and Martha Kent even going to show up in any way, shape, or form here in this particular iteration? I don't know, but I don't even know if I need them to show up. I'm so intrigued by what's been established in this first issue. I just very impressive. I'm as we're talking about it, I'm as it's I really loved Absolute Batman. I really love Absolute Superman. It's hard for me to choose. When we get this much substance in this kind of story, just like we got so much rich substance in storytelling with Absolute Batman, it's for that reason why I wish Wonder Woman had a little bit more story substance than it did. But still, it's what a great start for the Absolute Trinity for DC All In.
Yeah, I don't think he's met the Kents yet. I think that's all to come. Um, Maybe he's going to fight against the Lazarus Court. Maybe the first arc ends with him helping the Kents get their farm back. They sort of take him in as an adopted teenage son or what have you.
Oh, that's right. Good idea.
Yeah, he's been on Earth for a couple of years, based on what the Peacemaker soldiers were saying about the previous events. So, yeah, probably left Krypton right around that same age that I'm assuming, around that same age that we see him here. So around 9 or 10, maybe a couple of years of travel. So gets to Earth, 12, 13, spends a few years trying to help, from the shadows, as it were. He's 16, 17 now. So that's kind of the way I think it's going to go. Interesting that it really seems like Lois is probably a little older than he is. But the last dust of Krypton, as the name of the first arc is so, or this issue, Last Dust of Krypton, so interesting. Down in the Dirt is the name of this particular issue. So I like that idea of him. He's been here for years, but as we meet him here, this is the first time he's really showing himself. He's out in the open, and he's making that decision to more publicly fight for the little guy. And so as he's going through this first arc, will he be sort of, in a way, shaking off that last dust of Krypton and putting those Kryptonian values behind him, the Kryptonian values that the suit is trying to still maintain, of stay hidden, some worlds can't be saved, like, that sort of thing. And he's starting out down in the dirt, which is, similar to his father, working under, but he needs to rise up.
And it's very interesting that one of the things that hasn't made an appearance in this first issue is the cape. Where is Superman's cape?
Yeah. Where's Superman's cape? The cape made of the dust of Krypton. We'll have to wait and see. But for me, this blows Batman out of the water for me. And Wonder Woman as well. Yeah, I definitely think Wonder Woman is the weakest of the three. I really enjoyed Batman. Don't get me wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a great comic, super entertaining. But here's the thing. Like, Wonder Woman is who she is. And she changes the least in her absolute version. She's still magic-based. She's still about empathy and compassion and love and understanding and all that. Yes, raised in hell rather than Paradise Island, but still on an island even. So many things are exactly the same. With Batman, he's still a street-level character. It's still Gotham City. It's still the Joker. It's still Black Mask. Yes, his mom's alive, but fewer differences. I feel like I know more what to expect. With this, like you said it yourself, Rocky, everything has been turned on its head, and I don't know what to expect, and I love that. But even though everything is turned on its head, and even though I don't know what to expect, it still feels like Superman. He's recognizable, not just in how he looks, but also in the core of the character. Like, what an amazing job by Jason Aaron, just fantastic. One other thing I want to point out here, and I don't know if this is purposeful just because it's the first issue, but notice how the space in the A on Superman makes a 1. Is that because it's the first issue? Is it because he's the first, was the first superhero? Am I reading too much into it? I don't know. But yeah, for me, I mean, partly probably because Superman's my favorite character, and Batman's just feels overused these days. This was far and away my favorite of any of the absolute issues. Yeah. Like, it exceeded all my expectations. It was just so good.
It's wonderful when something actually meets an expectation, because my expectations were very high, and my expectations were not only met, they were exceeded. And that's I can't imagine giving a writer and a creative team, an artist and colorist, the whole 9 yards, a higher compliment than that.
absolutely fantastic. Just what an incredible start. The only worry now is, can you keep up that? Like, how do you top this, right? How do you? I mean, this
Exactly.
is going to be a very hard issue to follow. Because the other thing about it is, it felt like we got a good chunk of story. Still, lots to discover, lots of mysteries, lots of questions to be answered. So yeah, can they maintain that quality? You got to have some down issues so that you can have up issues. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. But if anybody's up to the challenge, it's this creative team. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Hope you enjoyed our page-by-page breakdown of Absolute Superman. Let us know down in the comments what you thought. If there's anything we pointed out that you didn't pick up on, or maybe there's something you think you're picking up on that we didn't mention. Again, we really love to get conversations going down in the comment section. Don't forget, our DC Spotlight comes out every week over on Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! Once you're there, you know what to do. Ring the notification bell, like and subscribe. Same thing here if you're checking us out on the Comic Source. Like and subscribe, ring the notification bell. Tons of content, tons of interviews coming out all the time on this channel. And if you prefer to consume your content audio only, we have the podcast feed for the Comic Source. Just go to whatever your favorite podcasting platform or app is. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, and you can follow us that way. Listen on the subway or in the car when you're driving, or what have you. So appreciate you joining us as always, everybody. Be sure to check out my interview this week with Tom King and Ryan Sook about his Black Canary Best of the Best series that's coming out. They had a lot of interesting things to say. A fantastic interview. It should be out tomorrow or Thursday. Definitely by Friday. Just depends on how long it takes me to produce it. So that's coming as well. So as I said, we appreciate the support, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
See you later.